Okay. All right, call to order, the Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. Planning Board and Zoning Board of Adjustment of Flemington Borough. This in-person and virtual meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Both adequate and electronic notice for this in-person meeting and virtual meeting has been provided by way of publication in the Huntingdon County Democrat and the Courier News newspapers on or about January 23rd, 2025 and January 19th, 2025. In addition, notice of the meeting was posted on the door of the Borough of Flemington Municipal Building located at 38 Park Avenue and any handicapped accessible entrances thereto, posted on the municipal website, provided to the municipal clerk and distributed to all persons of any requesting copies of the same. This meeting is being recorded with both audio and video and may be rebroadcast. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Thank you. Please rise as you're able to the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. All right. Oh gosh, yes. Eileen. Jeez, I'm going back on that.
Wow.
You're doing it yourself.
Paula is indisposed. She's a family emergency, unfortunately. So, can I call the roll call or do you want to do it? I'll call the roll. All right.
Called it all like last night.
Perfect. All right, Mayor Caro,
Here.
Councilperson Fazaro.
Here.
Mr. Campion,
Here.
Ms. Weitzman,
Here.
Ms. Swingle,
Here.
Mr. Shrove,
Here.
Mr. Schwenger,
Here.
Mr. Doshner,
Here.
Mr. Eckel,
Here.
Mr. Hain,
Here.
Ms. Abarca, did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, thank you. Attorney Kaczynski.
Here.
Engineer Clerico.
Here.
Planner McManus is not here, but Planner Kyle
Is here.
is here. Engineer Troutman.
Here.
And
Ms. Giffen,
yeah, here, thank you. I was gonna say, do I need to say it myself?
for the record.
For the record, here I am. All right, thank you. All right, so item 1 on our agenda, as always, is public comments. This is for public comments for items not on the current agenda. Not quite sure what you're asking, but this is a period for that. Should we say at this point about item 9?
We can in case there's anyone.
Because I tried to say, but
yeah,
can I say it legally?
So the application for Liberty Village that was currently on for tonight is going to be adjourned to next week's meeting of September 16th. No further notice will be provided. Same time, 7 p.m. Again, adjourned, no further notice to September 16th.
If anybody-
So there's anyone doing anything. Bye, guys.
We didn't want it to be too long.
See you next week.
Perfect, there we go.
Uh,
All right, yeah, we're going to come.
Sure.
Can you state your name? Huh? Oh, there's no microphone over there. It's probably this one.
I will talk loud. I
No,
have a
no,
question to begin.
You have to catch it.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Oh,
put that over.
perfect, thank you. Yeah. So if you could state your name and address, right? for
Yeah,
the
so I
record?
think you're only supposed to provide your town, not your address because of public records.
Well,
We require, it's
Really?
only for elected officials, it's not for, I gave the mayor quite a problem with this a few years ago.
I live at 26 Samuel Drive in Rare Township. I really just have a question to begin. Is there going to be the ability for any public input on item number 8 on the agenda, which is the consistency hearing for the zoning ordinance?
no, it's not a public hearing. This hearing is a consistency hearing. What we are doing in that situation is comparing whether the ordinance is consistent or inconsistent with our master plan. That what and then will happen is it will go back to council and they will have to do a public hearing. So there will definitely be a public hearing opportunity on the ordinance, but it will be through council. I'm just double check.
You're
Correct.
absolutely correct,
So
so,
at this point, am I prohibited from asking or putting some issues I'd like considered on the record regarding that consistency review?
Well, we didn't, the thing is,
I
it depends
understand
if
the
you, it
process.
depends if you have a question about the consistency or whether you're asking for things to be added or changed to the ordinance, because we
That-
didn't write the
I'm
ordinance, so
at-
that would have to go to council, right?
Yeah.
I'm correct?
you're correct. Now, in the past, the board has allowed for comments, maybe not necessarily questions, but comments, at this stage. You're absolutely correct, it's not a public hearing.
Hmm.
You're absolutely correct, this board does not have to consider anything that the public says,
Right.
positive or negative, but that has happened in the past. I would recommend if we're not going to do that, if Ms. Drews has some comments that she'd like to make at this point, she can certainly put them on the record. Again, not required and not anything that this board has to take into consideration.
Right, well, if nobody has any objections, I just say we let her make a comment,
be
so we can
brief. It's-
consider it in that.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the heart of the zoning changes that are being recommended to make your the new ordinance consistent with your master plan, because you are trying to fulfill your goals and objectives of your master plan, and I appreciate that. However, when I looked at the new permitted uses in both the B and the B2 zone, there seems to be one rather large group of current types of activities that now aren't included. And those are related to family services. So for example, the way the ordinance is now constructed for the B2 and the B zone, or the downtown business zone, I should say, is that things like Harbor of Hope, the guardianship, American Helpline, Friendship Center for New Beginnings, United Way, because they're actually in the Village Artisan Zone, and the Harvest Family Center, which is in the transition zone, those uses aren't explicitly permitted any place in your ordinance. They were before, but they're not now.
They were before under the SIC codes, I forget.
Yes,
Let's make our comments.
Well,
They were before under the
Okay.
SIC code, and those types of activities, unless you wanna kind of stretch and say, because they have an office, they're permitted. You know, seem to be absent from the revisions that are proposed for the ordinance. That's the only thing I wanted to bring to the attention. I wasn't sure if it was something that kind of was explicitly done, or just because it's easy when you're looking at a list of 40 some items that are permitted use and then trying to condense things down. It may have been overlooked.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay.
So is that was one?
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment.
And I don't know if you're going to stick around, do we know when the council is going to consider the ordinance?
Carla noticed it, but
For October.
for October,
Okay,
so, but I don't, so.
I would suggest to look at the agenda if you'd like to make the same comments to council.
Yeah.
Just check when it's.
Okay, and I'll probably sit for the consistency.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, you'll just come in.
Yeah.
Just
Um,
Oh,
there we go. Okay, no more, I don't see, I'm just looking, let me just double check. If anybody online wants to make a comment at this point, use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, make comments, please.
Just briefly, I want to introduce Catherine Abarca, who is the new member of the planning board, alternate 3, lives in downtown Flemington. And really happy to have her here. She's been away for the whole summer, so she's back now, rolling up her sleeves, so to be on the board with everybody. And just FYI, last night I also appointed Maria Shope to the Ship Street Commission. So we're almost full there with one more seat there open. We have alternate 4 on the planning board, second alternate on Shade Tree. And I think that's it. HBC's filled and environmental's filled, and the art community is filled. So yeah, so just a couple of these left. What, Dennis? You happen to get her out of the house?
It's a family dynasty.
What?
Very, very,
I'm glad she's,
She's great.
but,
very great.
yeah. That it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, council comments, please.
Yes, I know, I think you guys did it, you're on there, right? Just a brief comment, looking at the bills per orders that were sent out today by Chair Giffen. When we get to that point of bills, I will have a comment make on that.
All right.
And that comment is just, before we get to that point this evening, let it marinate that our chair reduced the budget this year.
Mhm.
So, that's it, so we're gonna have to take a look at that. So also, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I forwarded those. They didn't go through Carla because she's away. It just came direct from there.
Look at everything go on.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, Dennis, HDC comments, anything from you guys?
I have nothing tonight. We didn't have a meeting since our last planning board meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's get on to item 5, professional reports. Does anybody have a report other than what we're doing in the rest of the agenda?
I do not, since
Jane, no? Okay, then let's move along from that then. Let's approval of minutes. Did she send us that?
I didn't feel, no.
Oh, so we'll have to table that until the next time because, yeah, that was a bit of a last minute thing. We'll do that next time. So, moving on, let's go straight to item 7, discussion on Lone Eagle Central Avenue outdoor dining. Before we get into this, can I just check a comment you made to me today about escrow? I thought this was just a general discussion. Did this come in as an application officially
It
then?
has not,
No.
and that was what I wanted to confirm and just kind of see where this is going. I know it started out as a request and Bob is here tonight. So it came in as a request. We started looking at our current outdoor dining ordinance to see if it was addressed in any way. It seems like it may be morphing into more of a review of prior approvals to see what, if anything, would need to be done, if there were changes made, or if there were, requesting movement forward on this. So I'm just bringing them, that's not necessarily saying that we have to take any, that we can't discuss it tonight, but I just wanna
Right.
keep that in mind because, Bob pulled some site plans, we were looking for resolutions, so again,
Yeah.
to make sure that we do this properly for everybody that's involved in this. We may need to get to that point.
Right, so let's keep a view, like you say, that today, right, basically, otherwise it's covered under my budget if we don't ask for it.
Correct.
Let's just see if we
Exactly.
can get to a resolution today and see what we can look at and what we might need to do going forward. All right. So who can lead us off with what the issue is and what the problem is and what we need to do? Who wants to start?
Bob.
That's my understanding of it.
Yes, please.
The applicant is here, they can maybe clarify anything on it, but my understanding is that the applicant, the Lone Eagle property. And Beth did write a memo and she did attach a copy of the plan to the back of it. The frontage of this property, as most of the frontages of properties along that part of State Road. There's public parking with an island parking on both sides. In the case of the Stangler property, their property line kind of straddled out halfway into that parking area. When they came in for site plan approval, there was some discussion about that parking, although it was being allocated for their particular use, is really in the public domain. And there was a condition imposed that an easement to the borough for both parking and the sidewalk they were building will be dedicated to the borough. I have not been able to, I have correspondence talking about the fact that that had to be done before the plans were signed. I know the plans were signed, so I'm assuming, and that easement was actually being prepared by the borough attorney. So I'm assuming that in terms of the documentation before you, there's a request by the applicant to want to use that parking area for, and again, they can explain it better, but some sort of a permanent tent outdoor, some sort of outdoor dining area that will be positioned within those parking spaces. And again, they can describe to you how many spaces and what the size of it will be and whatever else. As Beth indicated, there's multiple layers to this. There's the conditions of whatever was imposed with the original approval. It was an original approval in 2009 or 10. There was an amended approval, I think, in 2017, where they actually added some outdoor dining on their property on the side. And then there was a subsequent approval for the adjoining piece that may or may not have had some implication for this particular property. That's the additional building when they go. So I think the heart of it goes back to the 2009 original approval. What's in what ownership, what easements were dedicated. Again, if everything went according to what was intended in terms of the approval, there should be a recorded easement along the frontage of that property that would put all the parking and sidewalk in a public domain. Again, all the rest of the properties along here, that is the case. It's fee simple. Everything, all the other properties are behind the sidewalk. This particular property line came out into the parking area. So, Beth outlined in her memorandum things that would have to be considered. You know, there was apparently a parking variance associated with the original approval. That would need to be amended. She's referring to, and I didn't get a chance to, I just saw the statement, I didn't get a chance to look at what she was referencing, but she's referencing another part of the ordinance that talks about only a certain percentage of parking can be eliminated. And there would be a need to preserve a handicap space as part of this. So there's different layers to this. I think you need to hear exactly what the applicant is proposing. And then, you know, I can kind of figure out what levels of other approvals. I mean, there's certain things the board may have to do. This may require an amendment to the original plan, perhaps. Even if it doesn't, I don't think this board would have the ability to grant an owner the right to use an easement that was dedicated to the public. So that's gonna have to go to the governing body. So again, there's different layers to this. And you just start by hearing exactly what the applicant, just to make sure we're not misunderstanding what we're proposing.
So I would say there's three things. I think we need to figure out exactly what the proposal is, how many parking spaces, you know, what area are we talking about using? Ownership, confirm ownership, and then that would presumably have to go to the governing body. I'd like to do a search for that easement to see if there's any language in that easement that specifically restricts use to a certain purpose. And then I'd love to find that original resolution. We have the site plan, but not the resolution to see what the parking variance was. If there was, again, any restrictions, if those specifically had to be allocated. And again, just so we make sure that whatever needs to be changed, so it's clear to everyone and then all the proper steps are followed and documentation done, you know, we look into all that.
And that's the 2009 resolution.
Correct, right? I wasn't here. That's what happened.
Yeah, that's what the correspondence, the documents I have, the plans were signed in 2009. And again, there's an amended 2017.
So, with that being said, Bob, would you like to come up and give a little
Yeah, absolutely.
explanation?
Thanks for the opportunity and Mr. Clark, you had a dimension I hadn't considered and even thought that was the case. Bob King, 41st Stanley Road, Low Eagle Brewing. Because if it is an easement to the township, so let's just roll this back just a sec for what we were trying to accomplish. If we recall during the pandemic, the state allowed businesses like ours to expand our seating to the front, taking up parking area. Flemington did not choose to extend that. The state and the governor and the assembly and senate unanimously adopted that. It is now legislation. So I was hoping that, and my original request is, and that's why I went to, I think I went to the council meeting at one point, and then we said, no, this is more of a planning board issue. You all know this a heck of a lot better than I do. So I was hoping that if Flemington were to adopt such a resolution, that then I could apply on an annual basis. So if parking, right now, parking on certain events are full, but on most weekends and most nights, it is not, because the way our businesses align with other businesses on the street, there's really not much of a conflict. There was gonna be a food court next door. Now it's a woodworking. They're not gonna have the number of people there as a food court would. So we think there's adequate parking. And I would love to ask John Ritter to come in and say, yeah, we can use some of his parking because there's plenty in the back. I'm sure he would be willing to do so for us. But so
Who's that you just referenced?
he Fine Wood, the Benchmark Fine Woodworking right next door.
Right next door, okay.
Right, that's where the food court was originally intended. So they're not gonna have, and he knows they're not gonna have nearly the volume that was anticipated when they were planning on having a food court. So really what I was trying to get at from our business was, how do we make this an annual thing where you all or the council can basically say yay or nay?
Well, you know what, we actually have an ordinance, section 2627 allows section O outdoor dining. And that was adopted in 2020.
But that was for the sides and the rear, if I'm not mistaken.
That, well, there are specific
Right, I don't
requirements
think
that
that-
we'd have to go through.
Yeah, and I
And
recall.
take a look, okay, so as long as you know that that is there.
It doesn't apply to the front, and that's what this legislation that the state adopted to make it easier for towns to continue supporting small businesses like ours to where it makes sense to extend their seating on a permitted basis. So every year we'd have to file for a permit, provide drawings and say, here's what we plan to do.
It's a little different, it doesn't just say front or rear, so what it basically says, and this goes to the first issue we're talking about. Be located solely on the sidewalk area or privately owned property adjacent to the principal building.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a couple things that, you know, possibly,
But
But
if there's, that doesn't count as street eatery, which is what this is.
I'm sorry, does it count like that?
Sorry, street eatery is like the
Street
term of art that we use for putting dining out in the.
well, but outdoor dining shall be specifically deemed a permitted accessory use to a brewery.
Right, but
Right,
if
no,
that,
but it's a, I think the issue that Bob was hinting at was even
If
if.
it's dining, I mean, that's really
Well,
like the next
well,
question.
Forget, yeah, that's a whole other, yeah, but that's the ABC fight, but my concern would be that even that process talks about private property and forget, even if, let's assume the easements weren't recorded.
Yep.
If the prior easement would have the parking spaces are half in and half out,
Again,
right?
it's all things we have to take a look at, but I think at least at this point, we'll have to look at it in connection with the ordinance and then see what, if any, other things the council may need to do to amend the ordinance, or he could come before the board and ask for relief.
but can he use the ordinance if that easement was set up and those parking spaces are public space? then the ordinance doesn't- not saying- Right,
Then I think this board would have to, acting as a board of adjustment, take a look and interpret this ordinance in light of the facts that we would find, the resolution, the site plan, the easement, all these questions that we've had along the way, and see if it could be applied.
What months is it gonna be up, are you proposing it to be up the ground? I mean, are you talking?
Yeah, I would like it to be honest with you, because that's a wonderful, well, if you recall, we used to, on the tent run up in the winter time, we got a permit to burn wood fire. Do the fire marshal, and that's a very, people, it's like moths to a flame, people love to have a beer next to a fire pit.
I hear it's a big turkey trot attraction.
Among others, yes. So that would be an ideal spot, as people drive by, they look at that and they said, oh, what a great idea.
And your proposal, are you proposing to eliminate the entire front area, including would you have two handicaps or one?
Just one, we could either relocate it to the side of the building, or we could leave it there, and I have enough cement areas to create safe seating, preventing cars from entering.
So how many parking spaces are you talking?
I think it's 6 spots, and it's 7 with the handicap.
So you're proposing to take 6, and you also have a food truck there on Saturdays, right?
Well, we could relocate that. We do that there for convenience, or that could be on the side of the building. Or,
That takes up. At least, great.
well, the way they park it, but if we're on the side of the building, it would be more in and out on the side.
towards reason.
That'll be a little reasonable.
Okay.
Correct.
But then the question is it more efficient, both in terms of time and cost? For this to be a board of adjustment matter, or for it to be an ordinance at council, which would then. First reading consistency, like it would have to, it would.
And the question of what they wanna do, does the council want to change the ordinance to allow other people to do that or not, or do we just look at this as a specific space?
And again, another monkey wrench, while this board would have jurisdiction over site plan changes. The language of that easement and whether the borough has to consent to amendments to the easement. That's why I think that's what's correct, so the borough may need to be involved regardless.
One of my concerns about this is that this wonky, crazy ownership thing of parking spaces on Stangle. And that there are some spaces that are 100% of public domain and some spaces that are 25% of public domain and some 50-50 and some 75-25. And then you get down to the distillery and the distillery is 100% private. And what concerns me, honestly, I mean, I'm just gonna like lay it out there, what really concerns me is that if we allow the elimination of Lone Eagle's parking spaces that may be 100% in public domain through this easement, or 50-50 without it, that the distillery owner could legally sign private parking only for our businesses. And then, you know, it's like, where are they pushing the parking to? That's a concern I have, because it's so wonky over there.
Yeah, I agree. I thought though, the way, because I know the town, the borough has a right of way.
Down the center of the road,
Right,
given to us by
but-
Dick Stodoff a gazillion years ago.
But I also understood that parking really wasn't enforceable. But I know there was this by the Fastenal, they put them, I said, yeah, that's kind of suggestive, the police.
So the Fastenal spots are 25%
That's why.
private and 75% in the public domain. So the most they could do is say private parking only for this.
They could tow the front end of your car.
So
And
you
so
told Matt.
we,
So often it's
Jay Troutman, our traffic engineer, looked at this, our attorney sent them a letter and said, signed it, it's illegal. Because we own the majority of the public domain area. And across the street at Stengel, I think it's 100% public domain.
Yeah,
You
that's why I
know,
like
factory.
the permitting aspect, because it really,
Yeah.
it gives you, the town, the
No,
permit to say yay or nay.
And I think that, I mean, as kind of a, if we could wave a magic wand and say that, hey, each year the town could look at the parking situation and then the governing body could issue the permit, whether or not, what conditions on the ground. I think that, I don't think anyone would disagree that that's kind of a great way to do it. It's just that we're kind of stuck with the ordinances right now. There isn't a mechanism to do that under current ordinance if in fact this is not, if the easement stuff and.
There's even shall renew permit language if there's no changes from one year to the
Yeah.
next. So it actually even takes away the ability of the borough to deny a renewal application if nothing's changed.
And I know that the new distillery owner was having a conversation with our construction office for a little while, or zoning office or somebody about putting a restaurant over there as well. So like if they need their spaces and they're being taken up by brewery people, this is a concern they have. It's like, I get what you wanna do.
Yeah, but that's.
And I don't
what-
disagree with you. If I was you, I'd wanna do the exact same thing. I like the idea of maybe an annual renewal and we look at what happens, like right now the distillery,
I think that.
you
makes
know,
more
is
sense.
whatever, and then if the distillery puts in a restaurant or, you know, creates, you know, the golden liquor.
69 days, you got to cease and desist.
Or the
Something goes-
wood shop goes back to its initial approvals that food court goes in.
Or they start
that was
teaching
part of the-
classes there
That
and
was
they've
part of the
got,
site, so.
I mean, that maybe they do beer and bench and they start having night classes and then they go over to your place and now all their spots are,
Working out though.
Yeah,
That's
sounds scary.
That's.
no, okay, bench.
So you drink
Bench
and bench first, then.
That's how my dad fixed my whole house.
So is there an issue where we need to, sorry,
No, I just have a question, maybe it's Kara. Is there a way to determine what of those 6 or 7 spots, are they all Mr. King's?
No,
No, they're
So
all.
on the original.
But you guys are saying 25%, so.
So the way Stengel works is, when you go into Stengel.
Yeah.
You go into Stengel, but just for the
I
public, so they
boxed up
know.
the 6 spaces and you can see where the
Right.
boundary line is.
If you go into Stengel and you're driving to Route 12, it's like 100, on the right side, it's 100% public. And then it goes like this on an angle to down to the brewery, where then it becomes like 50-50. On the left side, it starts out at this little tiny amount and it gets bigger until it's all privately owned. So on the
Does that
left
make
side,
sense?
so it's crazy.
Yeah. I
It's
just went
crazy.
into the vision.
Nobody.
so is that we need to
Makes sense.
revisit those easements? Is the simplest
We
way
have
to
to
solve this?
track down the-
Is there an opportunity to look at these along that whole track?
I think we're
The
hearing,
parking committee has wrestled with this now for almost 2 years trying to figure this out.
and has anybody actually asked Hunterdon County, done a search of Hunterdon County records to see if that easement's there? Do you know that? Cause I could do that tomorrow.
No,
So I
nobody's done that.
Okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
See what exists.
And I think we hear, you know, council hears, the board hears what some of the other thoughts are, so we could start percolating those, but I think that's. You know, again, has to be done, so we can at least, if there is a document, let's see what it says and.
I would totally support the idea of doing this as an annual permit based on everybody else's surrounding uses and what's happening with parking.
Mm.
And if it gets like really even crazier over there, with some of the currently quieter uses.
Would we be able to do that under the current ordinance then and have him come through you for the permit thing then, or is it something, well?
I think the language of the current ordinance has to change.
This is what I was gonna ask the question, right? Not asking you to do Chris Corsini's job, because you're not the borough's council, you're our council, but. If the easement was recorded and these are entire, and the borough has rights on the entirety of the parking spaces, which was at least the intent.
Yeah.
Of the initial resolution, then. Your reading of this at the moment is that. This ordinance doesn't apply because it's public, those are publicly owned spots, right? And so there would have to be some modification to the ordinance if that turns out to be the case.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would encourage or invite you to read what the state has done, because I think that's what they passed legislation to support towns to do things. If it is indeed public.
Hmm. It seems like we have a, it's a
And I can
particular
provide
problem,
a link to that, I have it on my computer somewhere.
it's a particular problem because of the easements inside. thing,
I
right?
didn't appreciate that until I heard it just now.
Right. It's awkward.
Just
Okay.
throwing this out there to the council member, another option if it could be is that the borough could rescind rights and if the easement's there, the borough could give its. Figure out a way to do this, but if the borough were to give an easement to the owner of this property for the part that's in the right of way, then they are privately controlled and then as ordinances exist could kick in with the annual whatever, but that's.
I'm gonna make this even more confusing than. Because if you think about it, when I looked at this, right, because I had Steve Romanowski come over and I had Dick Stodoff come over when he owned property, says. Bob, I own half of this parking, and I didn't know what he meant until I saw the survey, and I'm like, yeah, you do. So, because the road, that right away cuts right through his entire property.
So then I don't know, I'm
That's
just
why,
trying to find a way to-
when you do that, it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Let's find the easement, that should take me a day to go first,
Mhm.
okay, and then. I guess Carla's not back till,
Meeting Wednesday or Thursday.
okay,
This week.
cause I'd like to look for the resolution, which we tried to find, I think we've got all the plans we possibly can. So if we can get the 2009 resolution and this easement, I think that'll help. And we'll keep thinking about what else.
I really
What we
appreciate
can
this.
do right now,
Yeah.
trying to figure out, we're reminded, obviously, to work something out, it's complicated.
Oh, I get it. Thank you.
All right, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, we'll move forward on that basis then.
Got it.
Excellent. All right, there we go. Now we can move on to item 8.
The fun stuff.
This is a consistency hearing. And sorry, this is me writing it without Carla because she's for the zoning ordinance.
Consistency review.
Consistency review, the zoning ordinance 2025-21 sent to us. We've all been issued with our planner, Mr. Kyle. Had a report for us, so can I suggest that you start us off with the consistency review? Right up there, for I'm saying here in the receipt.
sure.
And from that, I understand, I've written, we have some one items to go through. Here's what I'm gonna,
She's gonna move back.
oh, thank you. Well,
Sorry,
we-
it was- Thanks, Kat.
the way that this can go various ways, but I'm gonna suggest that if you do a general overview and then go through the items in your report where you've highlighted, whether it's explain that.
Sure.
And then we can almost do like, I don't know, eventually we'll have to go through each of those items and have the board decide if they feel that's, and then we'll move on to some other comments.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the board's function here, as we talked a little bit about at the beginning of the meeting, is just to determine if there are any elements of this ordinance introduced by council that are inconsistent with the master plan. The reason we do this is because the municipal land use law explicitly says zoning ordinance has to be consistent with the master plan, CLI. So. Section, you got it? Section 64 of the land use laws is the section that requires referral, and it refers to section 26A. And it essentially just says, if the governing body introduces an ordinance that's related to a land use concern, it has to come to this board for a review for consistency with the master plan. So I went through the ordinance in detail and provided some thoughts that I had. I mean, there are clearly provisions in this ordinance that are inconsistent with the recommendations in the master plan. So what I did was kind of highlighted those in italics throughout the memo, just so that you can kind of quantify it. And it's also important for the board to consider the goals and objectives of the master plan. That's kind of the basis of it. So I reproduced all those just so you had them at hand as we were doing this. There's also a court case, the Supreme Court had a decision in a case called Manalapan Realty v. Township Committee, and what they said, quote, was provided there can be some inconsistency, but they said provided it does not substantially or materially undermine or distort the basic provisions and objectives of the master plan. So we kind of have that overarching thing with the goals and objectives, but then we have very specific recommendations from the 2022 land use plan that we're looking at. So there were, and I'll, as we go through, I'll highlight those. Essentially what was done here, there are changes proposed to permitted uses in a number of zones, all of which were addressed in the master plan in 2022. Some of the zones were discussed in a little more detail in the master plan, some were not. So the DB2 just refers to the recommendations for the DB. Some of the sections, like for the VAS or some of the other ones, were very short and only had a few things. So there, it's a little bit more of an extrapolation related to the goals and objectives. So just because something is proposed that wasn't explicitly recommended in the master plan doesn't mean it's inconsistent with the master plan. You have to keep that in mind. So now I keyed this to the sections of the ordinance, but there was a typo in the ordinance where a section was repeated. So it was, I think it was IV was repeated a little later. So I used that one twice, but I wanted to make sure it was keyed to the ordinance. So the first section of the ordinance was definitions. As I say here, many of these changes were aimed at providing clarity on specific uses, and there was really no discussion in the master plan at all about any proposed definition changes. So generally, when you're changing definitions, you're trying to do it to provide more detail. I review ordinances all over the state. Some have very basic definitions and some have very detailed ones. So I think with the goal of adding clarity to some of these uses and the fact that there was no recommendation specific to definitions, this would not appear to be inconsistent with the master plan. Section 2 is connectivity and complete streets. Again, there was some discussion in the master plan about complete streets policy, enhancing pedestrian safety and some other elements. But there was nothing really here that appears to be inconsistent with any of those recommendations. The transition commercial, this added permitted principal uses of learning center, artisan manufacturing, and then throughout all of these districts, we have this permitted accessory uses of pop-up events such as art installations, performances, sales and services, things like that. That was a common thread through all the districts, adding this permitted accessory use. So in the transition commercial, it was recommended to exclude retail and service uses that are better suited to the DB and the VAS districts, and essentially thinks that adding retail and service uses outside of those districts is going to undermine the viability of downtown business districts. So that was very specific. Here, they're retaining retail sales as conditional use in the district, and it also adds retail services, restaurants, breweries on lots of at least an acre with a width of at least 200 feet. The addition of hotels, that was not something that was recommended or reflected in the master plan, so that particular change would appear to be inconsistent, unless again, we can look at the goals and objectives and there's some kind of connection there related to that specific use. But that one would appear to be inconsistent. The issue of the pop-up events and art installations and the like, this was something that was discussed in the master plan, but specific to the DB and the DB2 district. The goal being, we want to have these events in the downtown so that we're drawing folks to that location. But now we're proposing to have them in districts outside the DB. So really anything, this particular accessory use anywhere outside of the DB or the DB2 would be inconsistent with that master plan recommendation. And again, it's the goal of focusing retail and retail service in the downtown, not taking away from, what we're trying to achieve there. The community business, the only recommendation here was related to pop-up events, again, not discussed in the context of that zone, so that would be inconsistent with the recommendation of the master plan. So the downtown business, I had a lot to say here. So this was, it expands the purpose statement in a way that's generally consistent with what was recommended in the master plan. Not verbatim, but generally consistent. So they've shortened the permitted uses. So we use the SIC codes still in some of these districts. So the recommendation in the master plan was to get rid of that, consolidate a lot of those uses into broad categories like retail service or general retail, which they've done. They've gone from 41 permitted uses to 19, and it eliminates the reference to the SIC codes. So the new uses proposed were indoor recreation, health and fitness, higher education and training, learning center, theaters, museums, medical offices, and club facilities. Residential uses are still limited to upper floors, but it conditionally permits first floor residential uses where that portion of the building faces away from the street, or it only takes up enough room required for an entrance. So if it was, something like 8 feet, where you would have a corridor for an entry to residential use. That is generally consistent with what was recommended in the master plan. It's actually specifically discussed in this district. The only departure here is that there's a distinction made between lots in the downtown business district north of Kapner or south of William, and they're allowing first floor residential uses, provided the building exists as of the date of the ordinance and no building addition occurs along the street facing facade. That is a provision that is inconsistent with what's in the master plan. So the whole goal in the DB was really to limit residential uses to upper floors, but allow it only for entrances or a portion of the building not facing. So the language related to Kapner and William Street is not consistent. There was a recommendation in the master plan to consider conditionally permitting 4-story buildings in this district that was not addressed. So it's not consistent or inconsistent. It was just not picked up in this particular ordinance. So that was not dealt with. There was a new note added to the bulk table, note 4, that appears to be intended to address a concern in the master plan regarding height adjacent to historic buildings and nearby residences. So essentially what it was saying is if you're adjacent to a building that has a residential use, you can't have an increased height within a certain distance of a property line. So again, I say it appears to be intended to address what was expressed in the master plan. So let me just get my place here. So the ordinance proposes office and medical offices permitted principal uses without exception. Currently, I believe it's required to be on an upper floor. And this is allowing now medical and office uses on the ground floor in the downtown business district. So that was something that, the master plan says, well, we don't really want, want offices on the ground floor. It's pretty common. I'm the planner for Pennington. That is a requirement that we have in our ordinance. We don't allow first floor office. Our downtown is much smaller. But the issue is we don't want to necessarily detract or provide uses that limit patronage, foot traffic, things like that. So that is inconsistent with the recommendation of the master plan very clearly, because the master plan said we don't want office uses on the first floor in the downtown business. There's also modifications proposed to the bulk requirements here, the front yard setback. So the master plan talked specifically about this notion of, particularly on Main Street, aligning the building walls to create a street wall of building. It's a pretty typical feature of a downtown. We do have some areas on Main Street that are a little disconnected, buildings don't adjoin, or there's a parking lot, things like that. But generally speaking, the goal was to align the fronts of buildings so that we have a consistent street wall on Main Street. What was added to the ordinance was a maximum front yard setback. So it also talked about the notion of pushing buildings back and having parking between the street and the building, which we don't want. It appears that the maximum setback of 30 feet was added to address that. I mean, I assume it was, but it doesn't go far enough to require the alignment that was envisioned in the master plan. So somebody could come in, and as long as the building is not more than 30 feet away from the street, it won't be aligned with the adjacent building. So that is clearly not consistent with the recommendation in the master plan. There was further clarification added on how average setback is calculated, and then this, again, new note 4 that limits the height of any building to 35 feet within 50 feet of a property line that has a residential use. So I think for the DB in particular, and then this is also going to carry over to the DB2 because the recommendations were the same. So the addition of the maximum front setback is not consistent with the recommendation. So while it was designed to help achieve maybe that, it's not going to do it. So that is inconsistent. The rear yard setback, so there was also a rear yard setback reduction that was proposed. That was not specifically recommended in the master plan. So it would appear to be inconsistent for a couple of reasons. One, there's really a potential unintended consequence here. If rear yard setbacks are reduced and buildings are expanded to the rear, it's probably going to come at the expense of any off-street parking that is behind that building. That could be particularly problematic. The other part of it is, we don't really want to have loading for Main Street businesses occurring from the street. It's a relatively limited cartway. We have parking on both sides. To stop a tractor trailer in the middle of Main Street to unload is not really desirable. That reduction of that rear yard could potentially impact the requirement to provide off-street loading. That's required by the ordinance now, and there's a reason that we require it. There are certain instances where it might work, but it won't work if we don't have adequate room at the rear of these buildings in order to do that. We also need access too. And the point I make here is, you need at least 24 feet for a drive aisle. You have to have some area for that truck or vehicle to pull off and load and unload and then leave. So that's going to be foregone if we were to reduce that setback in the way that's proposed here. So it really creates two issues: loading and off-street parking loss. The other thing is, we did change the ordinance relative to parking standards in the downtown. That was only for permitted uses that were going into existing space, not new space that's constructed. If the building's expanded, you have to provide that additional off-street parking. So we're essentially saying that, okay, yeah, we'll allow you to push the building back, get rid of any room that you would have had for off-street parking, because you can get a bay of parking in a 42-foot wide space. So 50 feet is really ideal, because you can get at least a drive aisle on one side of parking with some room for buffering, say if you have an adjacent residential use, anything like that. But again, that would be foregone if we allow. So what would happen is, obviously people would rather put building in than parking. So we're going to see a lot of applications for variances for off-street parking. Now, I don't have a good handle, and I think it's an issue that we're studying, off-street parking in the downtown. So it's unclear what effect this could potentially have, because we don't really have a good understanding of what's going to happen with parking in the downtown once these new uses that are about to open. So the main part of the inconsistency is that it's not recommended in the master plan. So clearly it was an issue the board felt we need to address front yard, didn't talk about rear yard. It was silent on that, but you know, these issues that I've talked about are kind of real world considerations for what this change might do. So the downtown business too, again, the recommendations in the master plan just refer to the downtown business, so a lot of the considerations are the same. It's the same issue with principal uses. They've been shortened from 42 to 13. And then condensing them into the broader categories. Residential use is still allowed on upper floors, but now, and conditionally permitted where it doesn't face the public street. All of that is relatively consistent with what was recommended in the master plan. And oh, by the way, the pop-up events, that's exactly as it was recommended. I think what it envisions is expanded beyond what was discussed in the master plan, but I don't know that that necessarily makes it, inconsistent. It was kind of in the same vein. So so again, it's really the same issues of inconsistency for the DB2, with office and medical office being permitted on the ground floor, which was clearly something the master plan did not want. So that would be inconsistent. Same issue with front yard setback. So a maximum is established, doesn't address the consistency that was desired in the master plan for the street wall. So village artisan shopping. So this expands the permitted uses to include retail services and health and fitness facilities on second and upper floors, which are both conditionally permitted now. And then office and medical office on second and upper stories, which is also conditionally permitted now. But we're taking it from conditional use to permitted use. So that's an important distinction, because if it's a conditional use, then the applicant has to come here to this board for a permit in order to have that use there or seek conditional use relief. Similar language, residential uses are still limited to upper floors, but it does conditionally permit where it doesn't face a public street or has an entrance of less than 8 feet. So conditional uses were amended to permit health and fitness facilities and office and medical on the first floor, whereas now we wanted it on the upper floors per the ordinance requirements now. And then it adds this pop-up events, art installations as a permitted accessory use. So the uses that are proposed are generally consistent. The master plan sought to add complementary uses that included entertainment and destination uses such as theaters, galleries, and indoor recreation. And it gave examples: children's bounce, sports training, or bowling. And then fitness oriented centers, which it specifically said yoga and Pilates, etc. Again, the pop-up events, that was only for the DB2, so that's inconsistent with what was recommended in the master plan. There's also modifications to the area yard and bulk requirements for this district, reduces the minimum lot area from the currently required 65,000 square feet to 32,670. It says 0.75 acres, so I gave you the square footage figure just so you can compare. Reduces front yard setback from 35 to 30 and adds this maximum front yard setback of 40 feet. There were some changes to some of the maximum heights for municipal use. It's increased from 35 to 40. And it also established a maximum impervious surface ratio for that particular use of 0.82, which is consistent with what's required for the district now. It also adds a note 3 to permit a reduction consistent with the average. And then, as I said, that we provided a definition that clarifies how you calculate that average. There was no discussion of any bulk changes recommended for this district. So from that perspective, it could be inconsistent, but again, if we kind of go to the general goals and objectives, we have to make a judgment if there's anything there that would, lend support to the changes that were made. But it's not something that was specifically discussed in the master plan. Section 8, highway retail, it expands permitted uses to include breweries, and it also adds the pop-up events as a permitted accessory use. So again, pop-up events not consistent in that it was limited to the DB and DB2. generally speaking, if you read the way the master plan is written, there's definitely a distinction between these districts that are not DB and DB2, and we wanted to limit the uses. So I think, you know, in my review of that language versus what's proposed, I think, you know, these uses would be inconsistent with what was discussed and recommended in the master plan. The last part was the super shopping overlay. This was actually an overlay that was recommended to be eliminated in the master plan. It talked about consolidating, you know, particularly over by the Circle and South Main Street, consolidating the overlay parcels into the HR district. So this maintains the super shopping overlay, and it's really the only change was that it added this pop-up events at those locations. So again, not consistent in that was only recommended for the downtown districts. So I think, you know, clearly there are a number of areas where the specific uses that are proposed, some of the bulk standards that are proposed are really inconsistent with what was recommended in the master plan. There are elements of this that are consistent though. So I pointed some of those areas out, but there are clearly provisions that are not consistent. So this was my take on it. And I think really just process wise, if the board agrees with this analysis, hopefully you had a chance to read it, formulate an opinion. If we're all of the mind that this kind of represents statements that we want to make to the governing body, we can just kind of transmit this to them. But I think we also want to take the chance to discuss any thoughts board members had. As I noted in the memo, there may be other recommendations that you have. So this is a big part of it. It's not just what's consistent, or rather inconsistent. It's, is there anything that's proposed here that you would do differently based on, you know, your role as a planning board member?
Is it proposed, you mean by you? Or you mean by?
No, meaning in the ordinance. So if there's any other provisions here that, you know, you want to recommend a specific change or anything like that, those are things that we can also transmit to the governing body in our recommendation. I do know that the Historic Preservation Commission had John Hatch take a look at this as well, and he prepared a separate memo. So that's also something that you would want to consider. I will say I did review the housing plan. It doesn't really talk about anything that would be related to these ordinance provisions, so I didn't really mention it.
And before, I do want to bring it out to the board for general discussion, but before we get to that, can I just a few and I'm sorry I didn't do this when you gave us the draft and before this.
It's okay.
In transition commercial section in the second paragraph, you mentioned that the change is inconsistent with the master plan, but that seems to just reference the addition of hotels. But in your discussion just now, you seem to suggest that the retail sales as a use was also inconsistent, retaining no, not the retail sales. You were talking about
The pop-ups.
the pop-ups. There was some, I wrote here that only hotels, not the retail retention. You mentioned there that retaining the retail was inconsistent, but that language, it wasn't included in the report. Would that be appropriate there or not?
Yeah, because the master plan really recommends that permitted uses in this district exclude retail and retail service.
Right, so in your description, in your talk to us, you said that, but in here it didn't really say it.
That,
Just a suggestion.
I'll reword that last sentence.
And similar in the downtown business section, like halfway down, you mentioned about these ordinance is related to the lots north of Capner and the first floor residential units uses, that was inconsistent, but again, in the language in here, we might need to add something in.
Okay.
That it looks different than what you said. And then I made a note in the village artisan section. The setbacks language in the previous parts of the report where you'd mentioned the setbacks, you'd said that was inconsistent, but here we didn't note that. Is it inappropriate in this section? Did I misunderstand that?
No, you know what it is, in a situation where we didn't necessarily discuss any bulk changes in the master plan.
Right.
It's something that could be inconsistent, like DB and DB2, we specifically said, you know, we want the building walls to align, and what was proposed is not consistent with
But for
that.
the front and rear yard setbacks, is that specifically because we brought that out and you brought that out in other parts of, in other in the DB area, but not in this one? Is it because that's, am I doing something?
So what I'm saying here is that the master plan was really
We
silent
can talk about setbacks in the
in the
meeting.
master plan, so it could be, so I make the statement,
Exactly
which means
right,
they
yeah.
could be inconsistent. I mean, really, the board,
But that statement relates to bulk standards and the setbacks,
correct,
because the setbacks are a bulk standard.
Same
they
thing.
were,
Right, there we go,
Yeah.
there we go, there's the penny drop for me,
There you
there we go. Ching, there we go.
And to your point, if we are gonna make some changes, my thought process was, since we do have a meeting next week.
That-
I'll formulate the resolution, I'll incorporate the inconsistency memo, any changes and any recommendations the board would have for you to adopt next week.
That's what.
If you're ready, I
Why?
don't wanna rush you, but if
Well,
we're ready to do
It's
this.
worth mentioning, we have a time limit, to provide this to the governing body, which does include next week's meeting, that's why I did this,
Yes.
but not past that.
right, yes.
We don't have
So,
another
unless
meeting
we have a
after this.
special-
Unless we have a special.
Unless we have a
meeting.
special meeting, which we don't really want to do twizzle, let's see if we can get it done. But would it be appropriate in that case, Cara, if these little things as well, if Jim's allowed to like amend this and then you bring that in and we vote on that part next week, would that be what you're saying, rather than you just make? So we can.
It is really
a
up
new
to
draft.
the board.
Okay,
If you understand what the changes would be and you want to vote tonight.
Mhm.
You can certainly do that, and then you can make the changes and bring it to the board, or if you feel more comfortable seeing a revised draft.
Mm.
That's fine, the only thing I would ask is if we could at least have deliberation tonight, even if it's not voting, so that when I prepare the resolution. I know if there's any recommendations that need to be added, otherwise we do it on the fly and I just.
absolutely, let's see what the discussion brings up
Sure,
and
okay.
what the weight, what the amount of the changes.
So
required
would
for-
that include, Karen prepared a few pointers of comment that are not about consistency? Would that be part of the resolution, or is the resolution strictly on consistency?
So twofold, and you know how I usually do these things. The way I see it is the land use law requires you to make findings of inconsistency and allows you to make recommendations to the council. I always say if there's something you want council to know, even if it doesn't fit in one of those two buckets, I'm happy to put it in the resolution or an attachment, just so they see it. We're in public, they're hearing what's being said, there's no problem with adding more than is
A couple of them
necessary.
are covered in Jim's report, but there's other
Sure.
concerns that.
I have no problem doing it.
Go to the traffic and the parking
Yep.
and, doing all of this prior to hundreds of apartments and hotel rooms opening up.
Whatever it is you'd like to relay, again, there's no problem doing more, I just wanna make sure that we comply with what the land use law
And
requires.
again, for the board, the thing that I issued, we can discuss the language in this too. Carla's already said some of the language needs to change, but I just threw that out for discussion points. So feel free to change any language you feel is appropriate. That being said then, let's. How do we run this? Do we do a general discussion or?
Let's start with some of the people that, not all, but
Yeah.
like with either Jeff or with
Mhm.
Dennis, who serve on the subcommittee, who've had a little bit more insight and discussion with this, before getting into some of the members who are hearing about this with.
I'm happy to defer to my colleague across the street.
I wish I was across the street. No, I follow, what Jim went through and the parking issue about limiting the space. Jim, the one thing that was, if I misunderstood you, correct me, but you said, because this came up previously, that towns haven't done ordinances that don't allow offices on the first floor, and you said Pennington actually has that ordinance?
We do.
That's interesting, because it never came up. But thank you. I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. But I think it's highlighting things that we talked about that are inconsistent with the master plan. So I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, thanks. You ready to go then?
Alright,
There
So
we go.
let me just make this as clear as possible. The ordinance is proposed by council, in my opinion, is inconsistent with the goals and objectives of the master plan. I believe that the report highlights the areas where that inconsistency is. I think the biggest thing for me is that we've been talking about getting Main Street DB and DB2 to be active uses at the ground floor, and the reinsertion of offices and medical offices as a by rights use is woefully inconsistent, not just with what we've done in 2022, but as long as I've been on this board since 2006, we've been talking about in multiple planning documents, active use on the ground level on Main Street, and concentrating the pedestrian, retail, restaurant, active use on the ground floor. If council had decided to think about a conditional use where there could be some conditions met for offices that were more active than others, if you want to say that a certain kind of medical office has greater turnover than an insurance company where three people come in and sit all day and there's very little activity, right? Like they didn't do that. And so absent that in the ordinance, just by making office and medical office by rights permitted uses on the ground floor, it's not just inconsistent with what we adopted in 2022, it's inconsistent with stuff that we've been talking about for 20 years on this board. So for me, that's a huge problem with what's being proposed here, and I'm glad that we pointed it out. I'm also concerned, and I didn't quite get this until you I read the report 3 times, but I didn't get it until you said it today,
Okay,
is that the expansion of the pop-up uses to areas that we never envisioned. I knew that it was inconsistent, but what really struck me is that we have a policy goal to concentrate those active events spaces to the downtown district. We want Main Street to be the center and the hub, recognizing the Stangl district has its own vitality. But like putting those pop-up uses everywhere dilutes the possibility of and dilutes the impact of having a vibrant Main Street. Like we have a jazz festival coming this weekend. We're having live music, on the courthouse steps. Like that's exactly what we want on Main Street. I don't want this stuck out in the super highway overlay district. Like so you said it in a way tonight, Jim, I appreciate it, but like put it on a fine point on it. We intentionally made a series of policy recommendations in the master plan to focus and concentrate a certain set of active uses and activities, including these pop-ups in the downtown core, and anything else dilutes what we're trying to do in doing that. So there's that inconsistency is loud and unfortunately a real problem. I know other people probably speak about the parking questions and the loading areas, but I think again, and I appreciate your work on this one, again, unintended consequence of the rear yard setback issue in the DB and the DB2 about loading zones and trucks and I had not thought of that when I first saw the ordinance draft from council. It will be a problem that, again, if we're trying to, I'm not saying we want to have people going 50 miles an hour down Main Street. We want traffic to be slow on Main Street. But there's slow, and then we're waiting for the truck to unload slow. Obstructed, right? There's a difference, and and within the ancillary potential for seeing a whole lot of variance applications on parking for us seems like the whole point of updating your ordinances on master plan is to reduce the number of variance applications that the board has to adjudicate.
And the time and money for people to go through
And
that.
and the time and money for the board and for its professionals and for the members of the public and applicants to have to spend on getting a minor, coming for planning board approval is not cheap, but coming for a variance application, especially around, like, those are expensive, and that becomes really hard for me to say. So I would say, like, I am, very appreciative of all the work you put into here to highlight every single space where this was, and I think having your perspective to see how all of these parts also fit together with other things has been really important. I'm glad we're getting rid of SIC codes, right?
Mhm.
But I don't think that just that, it meets the generally consistent standard that the case law would require us. There's too much here policy wise that is just inconsistent with stuff we're doing. That's how I you know, I'm feeling about all this, so.
No, I too appreciate Jim's report and the talk now, because like you, I read through this, we worked with Jim, we looked at a previous draft of this, and it's still your expertise in explaining it helps us to see different aspects, because it can be very confusing comparing the master plan and an ordinance and seeing where the subtleties lie. But that's the whole reason for having those documents, is that so that we can compare them and contrast and see which way we're going. So I do appreciate your report completely. I'm not going to say much more than just thank the thanks on it right now. I'm going to go to the rest of the board. Who's desperate to talk? There's jumping a little bit.
I guess I'll-
Is there a question?
No.
No, nobody has a raised hand.
Use the Q&A.
She spoke, she goes.
But we'll go online now, because we
No, we got Don,
what about Don? He's raising his little yellow hand.
I just want to know if we received John Hatch's. I didn't see that in the distribution to members. Is that going to be included in this report, or is that going to be set separately to?
Wait, then basically what the HPC, I don't want to take out Dennis's thunder, but they only look at it to the historic standards, right? So you can't see anything from Main Street, nothing's jutting out. They have no issues.
Mhm.
Because they don't deal with what's inside a building. So they don't deal with uses, they don't deal with putting housing on the first floors. And since all of this potential building is behind, it does not affect the historic district.
Yeah, and Don, when it was gonna be 4 stories, we did have a problem with it, but then they changed the final one that they proposed, limited it to 3 stories, so the HPC didn't have a problem with it, like Marcia said.
And
Thank you.
Don, I apologize with Carla would have sent the packet, and
Trying to see if I can find it.
I mean, I know I have it saved.
I can find it, I thought it did go out, but I'll find it and send it
Well,
out.
I got it, Richard Gibson, but I don't know who else got it. But I got it.
Yeah, I'll send it to the planning board.
Yeah, I thought I'd sent it out, but I apologize, I didn't. I certainly
No
intended
problem.
that
No
to be
problem.
part of a Carla addendum to our submission.
I just wanted to make sure that if there was any objection from historic preservation, that it was noted.
They
in the
didn't have any
report.
objections.
But since they
but-
didn't have any objection, but I'm in agreement with everything that's been said so far. It's certainly very inconsistent with the master plan.
Right, and are there any other areas that weren't mentioned, Don, that you have concerns over, or any areas that you wanted to praise in it or anything like that?
No, I think they covered it well. It was very comprehensive. I had a chance this afternoon to read quite a bit of it, and yeah, no, I appreciate the thoroughness and the
Yeah.
detail.
Exactly. All right, thank you. Melissa, can I come to you online? Because I was wondering if environmental had a chance to look at this ordinance and had any comments at all.
We have not, because our next meeting is actually next week. So we
Okay.
did not have a chance to review it. I mean, obviously, it is very thorough. I agree with what's been said with the inconsistencies. Sorry, I'm like exhausted here tonight, but so.
But I don't think do you think there's much that overlaps with the remit that you have as environmental for us to identify separately at all,
I don't believe so.
or okay?
Talk about idling trucks on Main Street.
Yeah.
That's,
That's a.
you can put that as a comment.
Yeah, the comment, not the environmental.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, thanks, Martha. All right, then let's go from, I'll look into my left, I'm looking at Mr. Hayden, the eye.
Okay, just a couple comments. I do agree with the comments that James report and Jeff's comments 100%. I believe we should follow the master plan. The board paid a lot of money for this over years, every time we've updated that. And Again, as Jeff said, active use on the ground floors have been discussed many years that I've been on this board, along with Jeff. I think the off-street loading and the parking loss, I think would be a significant impact. So, but I appreciate your thorough report. It brought a lot of issues out. Appreciate that. Sure. That's all I got.
I mean, I agree with everything that's said. I think from like a retail perspective, I think I appreciate the attempt to like expand it and allow everyone else to, you know, have the opportunity to create these events. But I think in what we're saying with our master plan, like our objective is really to revitalize and bring all that attention to the DB and DB2. So we're not at that point, I think, where we can say, let's spread the joy. I think we're really trying to focus still on this one area, and I think that's really important.
It's like the idea, we understand the idea, we
Yes.
appreciate the idea,
Yeah.
and I get that, but it's like one of these possible unintended consequences.
Correct, right?
I mean, if it is true though, isn't it? If the governing body chooses that, okay, this is the way we wanna go, they have the
Right.
right to choose the way they wanna do, that's the thing, the way to go, but we have to point out that it's actually
And this has
consistent
been,
at this
well,
moment.
but like, and everyone's saying, like, this has been the plan. Like, this is part of master plan, like, and that's what we've been investing in so much time and effort into, and that to, you know, I think we're on the verge of this, but we're not there yet. So to allow this ability to diverge it so soon, it's inconsistent.
Now, is there have we had the opportunity to suggest that it be issued as a condition?
Right, well, that's what I was
Rather
thinking,
than a.
I put that down, I
Yeah.
made a little R next to
Right,
Jeff's
yeah,
comment.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
open to it to be that, so that then individual things can be reviewed.
Right,
To,
Based upon certain conditions.
conditions.
right. Like,
We
I
could
do think
al-
there is a benefit to it, but like, I do think we do still need to,
in those districts,
Yeah.
because then it's,
right,
Because
we
it's
need to,
not consistent
yeah,
in
it would
those
be
other
fair to offer that opportunity to others, but not necessarily just have it out ballot, yeah,
right, yes,
if
okay,
that's possible.
yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna come to the other side then, Mr. Schlender.
Yeah, appreciate the thorough report. You know, I kind of have the same comments. My concern, like everybody else, is the downtown business district. I think if, you know, if you were to move the office and medical office from permitted to conditional, it would be consistent. Am I understanding that correct?
I'm not sure, is that correct? No,
Or not really?
No.
no,
Well, all the master plan said, no, it wouldn't, because it said, we don't want those uses on the ground floor.
Okay.
You know what?
anyways.
I think the comment was that might go towards a hybrid, you know, kind of a middle road suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, my comment was council could have written an ordinance that might have put some set of conditions around office and medical office that could possibly be consistent. They chose not to do that.
Right.
So as written, it's.
As written
Right.
and general,
Could be more consistent, I don't know if it'd be consistent.
Yeah.
right, but I think that our analysis of it would be, okay, you didn't get exactly what we were saying, but we see where you're going, which is very different than by rights, you get to do this, where we literally said, don't do this.
'Cause
It's like a
substantial-
180.
It's not substantially inconsistent. You know, that ridiculous
Double negative.
language, and then, yeah, legally.
All right, online, let's go back online, oh, do you have another one?
No, my only other, you know, comment with, from reviewing, you know, the ordinance was in the Village Arts and Specialty District. The master plan mentioned adding upper story residential in Lynn Park,
Mm-hmm.
and the draft ordinance does not.
Right,
Yeah, so
so would it therefore remove that then, as it is?
exactly, is that something
Well-
that's not gonna be, or is that something we're recommending to just add upper story residential inclusive work units to the ordinance?
Hold on, I gotta look at that,
You're,
cause I didn't address, I think it permits upper story residential now.
the VAS,
The master plan does, it says it's permitted, but the draft ordinance doesn't.
But these are amendments, so they might not have necessarily,
I don't think it wasn't, because I think we suggested last year as part of our work for the ordinance last year, where it was adding them in.
I know part of our conversation about putting it in the VAS was finding places where creative housing and active uses could mix, and the VAS was a place that made sense to do that. That was something I know we talked through for a while. I mean, not to call it any particular property, but the big property in the VAS that's not currently under a redevelopment plan, could be a very interesting space for that kind of lived works artisan. They would kind of lean into its history as a junction of turntables, not to mention that property. But like, there's a, we talked about this as a, like, hey, there could be some really great project over there that could add some appropriate scale housing in addition to having active. But like the idea of that could, because of what it has been historically, that putting live workspace, studio space, you know, where you need a little bit more room, potters and sculptures and some of that stuff that needs some facility. I mean, we have a pottery studio just across the way on Stangle, so.
But I think we were also thinking of it as a way for people who with more limited income, say, if they're starting up a business like that, you know, that like they can live above. And it'd be an active way for them to be active and live.
Especially for artisans, artists, I mean,
Yeah.
I think. Some of you know that kind of the whole, the beauty of my house is,
Yeah,
my husband's a sculptor.
right.
You know, and
It's the-
Right.
So, but having said that, is it in the ordinance already, or is it?
It is, so
It's just in right that it's
so
now taken out.
It's not.
It's not taking it out.
So it's
No.
residential dwellings, including live work units, are conditionally permitted.
Right,
So
okay.
on an upper floor or a portion of a building that does not face a public street on the ground floor.
Right, so that would remain no matter what.
Yeah, because I think the only, they're not showing that struck out, so nothing's being changed with,
Right,
they're adding health and fitness facilities as a conditional permitted use, but they don't change the residential, so that remains.
okay,
Yeah, having as a conditioning use it makes a lot of sense, because it's gonna really depend on the site and the particularities of the property, you're proposing, like.
and how much, yeah, exactly, as a studio or, exactly. All right, thank you. Now, if I may, one more, absolutely.
From the VAS district, so does the ordinance state anything about the current ordinance state anything about the district-wide design and streetscape standards? Because that is not mentioned in the ordinance and it is in the master plan.
Did you say something about that sheet? Oh, no, it's complete. No, I didn't say- Yeah, I know, but I thought.
No, there was nothing about design standards for. the
Yeah,
district.
I don't think that was touched anywhere.
No, I don't remember saying about that.
Okay. So what would that mean then for the
Means-
situation?
They didn't choose to put it into this ordinance, even though it's a recommendation of the master plan.
Exactly.
It's not an inconsistency now.
It's just
what
an omission.
We can
If
make.
they don't
There's no
but
mention.
you can make it as a comment if you wanted to.
Well, hold on, the only thing I would just wanna check is the sections that are being proposed to be changed largely relate to uses and bulk.
Right.
Are the design standards a totally separate section that aren't even addressed by way of this ordinance?
And that may be.
That's what I'm saying, that could be a possibility, because I wouldn't think design standards would be in those sections.
Okay, but if it's, can we not suggest that the ordinance could have included?
We can make sure
If
that
it's going to this
it's not
level
changing it.
of bulk standards, you might as well have added this portion in.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking and let me see where it is,
Okay.
because it may, again, if it's in a completely separate section and that's not proposed to be changed, then.
And
we
again,
could put a recommendation saying, make sure that nothing changes in sections, blah, blah, blah.
yeah, that's,
But-
yeah, maybe that's the way to handle it, because those comments as I understand it, the governing body doesn't have to, they can just say, okay, well, nice, thanks for mentioning it, we don't have to do anything, is that correct?
They do not have to adopt your recommendations, they do not have to agree that it's substantially inconsistent.
Mhm.
They do have to make findings as to why they are adopting an ordinance that is
Mhm.
substantially inconsistent.
Right.
So other than that, once they do that, they can continue to adopt it.
But in doing that findings, do they have to consider these things that we're suggesting they could have added in or not? They don't have to worry about it. No.
You're getting
Okay.
into a fuzzy area.
Exactly, that's why I'm thinking, is it worth mentioning or not? Or even
I
if
just wanna
they say
say-
it's not
I just wanna
gonna expand.
Listen, again, you know, I usually say if it's something that you wanna say, put it in there. Asking or saying more never hurts, but
Mhm.
I honestly don't think that this was ever intended to address any design standards, so let's just see where that's located.
And the master plan recommendation was just that a set of standard signage, lighting, circulation, landscape requirements and streetscape standards should be established for the entire VAS district, yeah.
Mm.
Implying that there's not one now, right?
Mhm.
And again, just because a recommendation that is in here isn't implemented with this ordinance, doesn't,
So do we bother bringing it up because it's something that our ordinance subcommittee could address if they want to?
correct.
So your design standards are in chapter 16.
But considering that now that a large part of that district is under a redevelopment agreement, which has its own standards anyway.
Yeah, but the balance of the VAS that's not under the
Mhm.
redevelopment agreement is something we care about.
Right.
And we want it to be
I
done well.
think, I don't think we should put it in there. I think if the ordinance subcommittee and the planning board wants to put it on and send an ordinance on to the council.
Just do that separately.
We can do that.
Yeah. I mean,
It's completely separate
Go for the
section.
remainder.
If it's a different section, then we don't really.
Totally separate section.
Okay, then
Yeah.
it's not, approved. It doesn't seem appropriate. Okay, thanks for those. Thank you. Mike Champion, I'm sorry I forgot you online over there, I apologize. Do you have anything to add? Say?
Jeff covered my concerns earlier. Thank you.
Great.
Good job, Jeff.
Okay. All right, so, Adrian, I miss Adrian.
I
And I'm coming.
we'll take the best for last, okay? I consistently said, we need to have walk in, walk out businesses, foot traffic on Main Street for years. This, putting the offices back in, which was part of the master plan of 2022. And I think I was well read on that at the time. It's very, it seems like we're going backwards, or we're trying to accommodate for. We're trying to accommodate to keep the scenario the way it is, as opposed to looking forward and saying, what else can be in there? One of the things that I will say, I know we're seeing here, but I've heard consistently in meetings that the landlords need this. They need this in order to be motivated to improve their building or to find people that will run it. And I understand, hey, a dental office, we had, last summer, we had a dental office that was not where it was supposed to be. And we, as a planning board, approved that for that dental office. She was able to stay in the borough. And one of my concerns was then, what I was asking, what does the building look like on the inside? I'd walk down there, there's no backyard in the back of that house. That's all a parking lot, literally. So I think if we already have an area that has parking in the back of it, and I'm trying to think like, as you go on North Main and you see what used to be dental offices, insurance offices, there's parking right behind that. My other big concern has been the building on the back of the buildings. And I don't know if any of you have been watching the meetings or been in tune with it, but the idea of that level of density in the back of the building, what I couldn't conceptualize for the report was the movement in back of it. I love the idea of connecting parking lots so that, you know, we're not having people darting in and out of every single street and every single entrance. But I wasn't thinking about, hey, how does, you know, I don't think we're gonna have 18 wheelers, I don't know, but a very large box truck could have issues on that street. And our streets are very narrow. And then where do they go in the back of it? So I want to thank you for giving me the concept of, I've had this concern about building backwards. and building up and backwards. But not thinking about really beyond just where do the residents park? Or where do we patrons park, but. Yeah, what is an emergency? An emergency, that's an excellent point, and I think, safety has always been something that I hammer to other council members, so when we start getting into. How do people get up and down streets, how does my fire department get up and down streets? We have a wonderful police department, we've got to think about those things too, so thank you very much. And I will concede. You have a great idea.
I don't feel it's really appropriate for me to say anything because I don't really know fully what's going on. But the two thoughts that were in my head was the emergency vehicles and people being able to get in and out quickly if it was ever needed. And then the other thing is when I think about small businesses and you talk about ways for people to get started and you talk about pop-ups, having something like kiosks and something that's like smaller, like in Pennsylvania, they have a lot of buildings where they have multiple businesses, kind of like a room within one building. And then if one doesn't have a lot of money, you can have, they have multiple restaurants, they have people sell dried meats, they sell like everything you could think of,
Donuts, jewelry, I pass every day on the way to work, donuts, jewelry. Then there's some sort of like macrame lady or something in there. It's great, they got great donuts that one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Marsha,
Before I give my comments, I would like Jay Troutman to just weigh in a little bit on this issue of removing parking from buildings. And this loading and unloading idea as well. All in conjunction with the 2022 ordinance that eliminated the need for any parking for any commercial business on Main Street, only offices. So, would you weigh in on this, Jen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm glad Jim Kyle brought this out in his report. It was a section I circled when I read his report, and I am very sensitive to the potential, parking issues we could have downtown. And I think, the vibrancy of a downtown will only last as long as you can get people there and park them and have that all functioning in a healthy way. So, and I think the board understands that. I've heard several board members say they don't want loading on Main Street and that we need to be sensitive to downtown parking because, again, having parking is critical to vibrancy as well as all the other things that have been stated. And I would also just anecdotally say I have an office in downtown Westfield, and they are a town that does not allow office on the first floor because they don't want people walking by a cubicle with a blind down, or if the blind's up, you're looking in on a cubicle. So that's just a personal comment.
thanks. Thinking about it, Jay, would you be able, could you write a memo to the effect of the concerns that you've mentioned that we could add it as a formal part of this report?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
And especially, it was one of the comments that I put around as general comment is, it's that unintended consequences of the two ordinances would overlap that could, the particular concerns, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I'd appreciate if you could write, and it'd have to be within the next week because of our time crunch, so apologies for putting you on the spot on that, but I think that would be a more formal way, a professional way to put it, those thoughts forward from us.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jay. So thank you for weighing in. So I just want to circle around a little bit. The planning board, the ordinance subcommittee and the planning board spent a lot of time last year on creating an ordinance that would create a vibrant Main Street. I know that the members of council, the governing body, this planning board, people in general are always saying there's nothing to do, there's not a lot to do, there's nothing happening on Main Street. And everybody's weighing in that the Union Hotel is gonna create more interest for more kinds of retail to come into town. And we tried to get ahead of that last year and follow the master plan and eliminate the office use and put it on side streets and second floors because we have so many county buildings on Main Street, right? We are the county seat. That is not going to change. We are gonna be the county seat, we're the county seat for about about 100 years, up to 150 years. We're gonna be the county seat for another 150 years, I should know off the top of my head, sorry, you know. So, you know, with the county seat, we have a lot of offices that work hand in hand with a county seat. We have a number of title searchers. We have a number of lawyers because we have the justice complex and the court complex. We also have architects and we also have, you know, medical facilities and things like that. But, you know, those complementary uses to a county seat, when the county closes and locks up and turns its lights off at 4:30 in the afternoon, those other businesses do too. The law offices do not have clients coming in at 7 o'clock at night. The title searcher cannot get into the Hall of Records to do title searches, he goes home. So our Main Street becomes very dark. And we proposed an ordinance that was going to try to keep the lights on later. Over time, slowly moving the office people into more what we thought was appropriate spaces. And I'm gonna say this loud and proud. This planning board in 2025 is the best planning board I have seen in Flemington, and I've been following this planning board since 2006. It is completely unpolitical, completely unpolitical. I am very proud of the people that I've inherited, appointed, or reappointed for not playing politics. And where we put in this ordinance that was, yeah, it was gonna make some people angry, but it had a long-term vision to bring into town the kind of Main Street we wanna see, which to me is Westfield. We're not as big as Westfield, but Westfield is very, very vibrant and, you know, and you know, you need that economy of people being able to walk from store to store to store. They don't want gaps of 6 or 8 dark buildings and then pick up more retail, which is what we currently have. And, you know, one of my concerns is we want to eliminate office because people lock doors up, you know, at most cases early with the county. Adding this now additional residential component of putting apartments in there, that's even worse. That's even worse because at least with an office, and I'm gonna pick on the Democratic headquarters. I mean, I go by there all the time. They are churning people in and out. And I'm sure some of those people are hanging out on Main Street. That is, you know, it is a churning kind of office building where a lot of people are stopping by and maybe they're going over to get a cup of coffee afterwards, or maybe they're getting in their car and driving down the street, or maybe they're trying one of our new stores. It's way better than having, you know, a couple of people in an apartment there who are out all day at work and or whatever, and it's even less use. It's a less intensive use than what we were trying to do by eliminating office. They've made it even less intense as far as people, you know, they can say, oh, it's walking wallets, it's putting people on Main Street. Like it's not though. What we need is the people on Main Street, the people in this town, the 205 new apartments at the Union Hotel to have someplace to go. That's what everybody wants, is things to go and things to do. And so, you know, they took like some really great ideas that we had from our master plan and have diluted it. You know, and like, and what they've done is, in my opinion, basically politicized the entire intention, because the stuff like with the pop-ups, all of that is coming from complaints from business owners who have tried to come into town and have complained about our zoning. And I get it, like I got a million phone calls about all this stuff. And either you have the vision and you're willing to stand strong and not politicize it, or you're gonna roll over and try to be everything for everybody. And if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. And that's, you know, what you've highlighted, Jim, so well about these pop-ups, because I was okay with them all over the place. I'm not okay anymore because of what you highlighted and Jeff articulated.
About bringing everything onto Main Street.
So, you know, we really need to stay focused on what the vision has been all these years and not allowed, you know, the easy way out to just be everything to everybody, because then why even have zoning? Why even have zoning? Let everybody do whatever they want, you know? So I think Jeff nailed it regarding accepting some kind of, like, I would be okay with certain conditional uses for office and medical, because of what I've seen with the foot traffic. And at Democratic headquarters, I mean, it's been incredible. Of course, it's political season, it should be incredible, but it's been very impressive to me to see a lot of cars and vibrancy there. My you know, biggest concerns about this were allowing, you know, residential apartments on first floors between Capitol and Williams, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid. We were trying to put back Victorian homes into single families, which is in the master plan. They removed that. They've added more apartments without, you know, dealing with what we already have. I mean, we've got all these apartments coming online between the Spice Factory, it's 100 and, I don't even know how many. Jeff, do you know? 100.
Spice Factory?
Spice Factory, 68 in one building and 80 in the other. It's like 130 or 120 apartments.
Sounds about right.
And they're ready to start renting. We got 205 coming online at the Union Hotel. This is all in absence of traffic study, traffic software, anything to deal with it. And yet we're gonna do things like, you know, this
See until we
this
update
whole
them.
thing with the bulk standards in the rears. And now putting these tractor trailers,
Spice Factory.
116. Okay. But they're not online yet, and they're approved.
let's
They're not,
deal with
they're not online. But I'm just saying that, you know, we've got a number of hundreds of apartments ready to open, hundreds. And we're gonna take away parking in this ordinance, which is so critical and so premium. And the council president mentioned at one of the meetings a couple of meetings ago about building a parking garage where the municipal parking lot is. So we're gonna eliminate parking and then have taxpayers' dollars build a parking garage. Like, what? Like, we need to wait and we need to see what happens. And we need to go back to the master plan and go back to some of these basic ideas about the long-term planning of the town and, you know, and depoliticize it. And I'm not talking about politics like Democrats versus Republicans. Depoliticize it by staying the course on this vision that this master plan has articulated for decades, which is a vibrant retail services based Main Street. And, you know, and I guess that's it. I mean, I can't, Jeff was so articulate.
Can
about what he
I
said.
add one thing on what you
Please.
just said, is that, just to put a fine point on this, that the recommendation, because of how we do master plan work, not just because of the state law requirements of these things, but how we as a town have been doing this for a long time, you have public hearings and feedback, you have resident surveys, you have stakeholder engagement, you have over a long period of time, we've adopted this kind of notion of where we want to go with active use. And that is very different than, I'm saying this as a former council member, right? It's very different than how one thinks of the world when you're elected.
See, I think the world,
But
that's how it is.
But it's more of, you know, the master plan is supposed to be looking at a 20-year or longer horizon. We're supposed to be looking at, and maybe it's because I just taught this to my students, but like we're looking at the long-term interrelated impacts of what we do. We're looking at the traditionally communities and members of the community that are traditionally excluded from decision-making processes, like there are things that we're supposed to be doing that which is why we have this process of consistency review so that a, three or four people on a governing body, say, hey, we wanna do this thing, as opposed to months and years of public meetings and consensus building and long-term vision, where we then say, hold on a second, we've all been talking about this for a long time, here are the things that we've been talking about. And so we hold it up against that standard, and that's for me important, not just somebody who's lived here forever, but like
The thing is that we, the ordinance that we put forward last year eliminated SSC codes. It, directed the uses to more appropriate spaces long term. And it was reactive to long-term planning and the people in this town who have been saying there's nothing on Main Street, it gets dark at night. It's gonna continue to get dark at night. It will continue because you've got whole areas, and now, you've got, basically, this is a landlord-driven ordinance where the landlords get to put anything what they want in. Chris Pacal leaves his office, and it's a little too hard for his landlord to find another office use. He's now gonna turn it into an apartment. It's anything they want, but honestly, as a resident here, it's nothing I want. So, I want to walk Main Street, store to store to store, service to service to service, restaurant to restaurant. And, this is about, it's about the landlords, it's about the landlords and letting them be anything they want at any time because it's easier for them. And, one of the council members last night, Councilwoman Engelhardt, made a speech where she basically said that she heard what the landlord said, she heard an FCP meet up, this is what they need, this is what they want. Well, what about everybody else that I've been hearing? And I know you've heard them, you want more to do,
And
you want the vibrant Main Street.
One of the people that was here for Liberty Village, that gentleman, I met him before I was, I think this name.
Which one who left right away?
Yeah, I got the glasses that was here,
Yeah, Tom,
His son's name is Dylan, I just know some kids' names,
Yeah.
but anyways, that kind of concern for somebody who's bought a nice small home in a small town. He's worried about like a 2-story condo. Now, I'm trying to imagine if you have a small house or your house is dense to Chris Pickle in some way, shape, or form, where that office is, what it's like to live with all of a sudden 3 stories back, trucks coming in and out. What it's like to go from maybe, a apartment up here, business down here to now shut up into 6 different apartments. I'm just trying to think like, yes, we have landlords, but we also have people in this community who invested in this community, let's say the past 10, 15 years, when there was nothing on Main Street. When Cut Glass Factory, and I've said it, and I'll say it again, looked trashy and was embarrassing to drive by. And there were people that made that commitment to this town because of what we saw it could be. Because we looked at those master plans, because we were looking at development agreements, and it was very easy to say, let's take a chance on Flemington instead of Montclair or Princeton. Knowing that it will never be Montclair or Princeton, I don't want it to be Montclair or Princeton, I want it to be Flemington. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of consideration for, maybe we'll only spend $300,000 or $500,000 on a house. But that person who spent that money and has put all those years lovingly into restoring these little homes that nobody else wants, right? Now, all of a sudden, they just don't have the value of somebody who can build a $30 million building. And honestly, that's what I'm hearing from residents. I'm not running again, so I don't care if anybody hates me, right? I'm just here, just stepping up.
and you just now became linked up, that's power stuff.
The power sucks, you know what? It enables me to say things that maybe someone who's trying, just trying to go up that political ladder, they have that concern. I don't. I'm not afraid to be hated by one of
Well,
them.
Can I wanna make sure I wanna put on the record for Kara to put as a recommendation that or one member of the public who made a comment. I want to make sure, I am thumbs upping and plus oneing, or whatever you want to call it. The notion of social service agencies needing some way to stay with, the use needs to has to be considered somehow. I don't, again, we're not talking about, you know.
It was one of those inadvertent.
No, more than, more, I don't know, but I think that there's gotta be something in there. This goes into recommendations, right? This is not, right, recommendations, that there's gotta be, whether we preserve the conditional use, or it's gotta, like, there's gotta be a way to make sure that those uses are somehow accounted for. Because what's gonna end up happening is if it's removed at all, if it's moved entirely as the draft has it, then every single one of these nonprofits who have zero budget is gonna have to come in for a certificate of continuing use. And they're gonna have to spend money on professionals they don't have. And so as long as we keep it in there as, even if the recommendation is find some, if council wants to adjust the conditions or account, like, that's fine, but we can't the draft that eliminates the use altogether, I think is gonna create more problems. And we are the county seat, as Marcia was saying, we're the county seat, we're gonna be the county seat, centralizing those agencies in town where it's walkable and there's all the other stuff.
They don't have to be on Main Street, they could be on the side,
No,
they could be on the second floors, and I'm okay with all that.
But they could be on the second floor, but if we get rid of the use entirely,
Oh, yeah, no, no, no.
Oh, yeah.
then we can't do that, that's what I'm saying.
And
Right.
this is exactly why we have these things and we have the public come in, because people spot things that nobody intended that to be taken out, that she was exactly
No, I mean,
right.
I think
That
ours-
was not intended to be taken out.
I
It's one
really
of those
think our
inadvertent-
intention last year was that all that kind of stuff, whatever it was, the lawyers, the doctors, the Indian chiefs and the, you know, the social services,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, the side streets, upstairs. Not
Which
not down
again,
here.
and if we have an agency that's existing right now, as long as the use is permitted in the zone, they don't have to come in for, they don't have to
Right,
come in.
right.
That I wanna make, I don't wanna put a burden on nonprofits like that, and if a new one wants to come in, we find them a nice spot on the second floor or something like that, and that's fine, but so I wanna make sure that gets there as part of it. Look, we make a recommendation, we had thought that with the Justice Center being built, and we thought that when the jail was gonna be a jail, as opposed to what it is now, we thought there was gonna be all these lawyers along Park Ave, we thought that was
That was
gonna,
my dad's proposal.
right, that was that, right, and guess what, 20 years in, did not happen.
They never zoned for it.
And so
That lost
we,
the planning board vote.
and we pulled it out, right, we pulled out we made a recommendation, so it's not that we can't, with the benefit of time, revisit things as conditions change on the ground, but like, but so we need the lawyers, like, they're gonna be around, can't get rid of lawyers. That's just what it is, right? But like,
Okay,
so it's not a question about having these uses, we're the county seat, the professional officers are going to be here. And we are charting, what we put in the master plan documents was where we want them, where over time we wanna see this.
Well, remember, we started at Kapner and we went to the Church Street light. And then Beth encouraged us to get brave and go down North Main Street, and that was a little too far, and. I mean, I really thought when the council started, quote, tweaking this, that's what they were gonna do, they were gonna bring it back in. But they really,
All over.
but they didn't, cause we were focused on, other than putting back the painted ladies to single family homes, our focus was really on bringing in more businesses and services on Main Street. And that is not what this ordinance does, a lot of housing for housing's sake. And this elimination of big parking lots in the back is extremely concerning. It's extremely concerning because we have no requirement in the Union Hotel resolution that requires the tenants to take out parking in the parking garage, none, zero. And, we can start there and we've eliminated in 2022, the council at the behest of the planning board unanimously eliminated the parking requirement for commercial spaces on Main Street. So that allowed T-Berries to open, parking spaces on Main Street, so I'm sorry. It allowed T-Berries to open, it's allowing Aunt Millie's to open, all of them have a deficit of parking, if we had a parking requirement now. So, when I was talking at the parking committee last week, to everybody was like, if these businesses need income and they've got these huge parking lots and their uses don't require all those parking spaces, why don't we develop an ordinance that allows them annually to look at the uses against required parking spaces and allow them annually to lease out parking spaces so that residents or tea berries or some other, whether it's a building or resident, could then take up and reserve parking spaces in these unused parking lots where there's extra parking now. And then next year, if the vacuum cleaner guy goes out and some really cool boulangerie comes in and they need more parking, they lose parking, there's no more, you take away some of that and you look at it annually. And there seemed to be unanimous consent at the parking committee to look at it, and we asked Beth to work with Chris Corsini to work up an ordinance. But that whole idea is dead based on this ordinance, because we're gonna jump.
I wanna get your.
And then this is, if I can, on that point, it kind of ties into what I wanted to say. No, first up, before I do though, I wanna thank you for mentioning that this planning board is, you like it.
It's
Because
I
it's
said it
something,
was the best.
It's the best one.
That's what I heard. I heard the best.
it's the best you've ever had.
In 10 years.
And I will say that people who worry that their view isn't necessary or isn't appropriate, it's because of that we like to talk on this planning board, right? Other planning boards maybe don't talk. We do like to talk, but the important thing to me is that all the people on here have varying different opinions and it all ties into it. It all ties into everything we try to work on and try to do. And I can't speak for everybody, but I'll speak for myself when I say this, that in my time on the board, I've tried to speak for all the stakeholders in town. All the stakeholders, especially when we've had public hearings where there's been nobody here. And it's always been really important to me to think, what does, not just me, what do I think about it as a resident, but what does all these other people that aren't engaging with the process, trying to think what they want. And that does inform what we're doing on here, because I know my mindset is all the stakeholders in town, which is lots of different people, including landlords and businesses, people coming to town who don't live here, people who do live here, people who are renting here, people who buy here, all the people, because we all love Flemington, that's where we came and where we live here. And so I just want to, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but that's how I feel. And I'm not elected. And I like your point, Jeff, especially about the difference between the focus of electeds versus this board, where it is, we have a longer term look to everything, a different view, and both things are necessary, both things are needed, but they have to work in conjunction. So having said that, I do want to check if the board feels that these 3-4 comments that I sent out by email, whether they've been incorporated or whether we want to incorporate them somewhere else. I feel that the first one, I feel that actually Jim's report really.
And let's see, we're not gonna discuss about non-approved.
I won't
projects.
mention those. I've crossed those out.
Thank you.
Those are in number 3. But in number 1, my comment in number 1 was about parking relief ordinance directed uses, the unintended consequences of the 2 ordinances. In fact, maybe Jay's report memo will cover that much better than my comment does. So Jay, let's add that into your if you will. And I think Jay could actually almost Jay's report could almost bring in number 4, that was talking about having a build out analysis done somewhere. So maybe that's something, Jay, that you would, do you understand what I was saying in that? It came up that that could be something that's necessary for us to do before we make changes like are in here. Would that make sense to you? He's nodding, so I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, great. But the number 2 was changing bulk. We were concerned about changing bulk standards, particularly within VAS, before the effects of any development locally is seen or known. Is that encompassed in the report, we think, or do you want to put something extra wording in or a separate? Does this need to be a
So
separate
if we're
comment?
trying to avoid any particular properties to make Kara not switch.
Okay.
What I would.
do that.
I'm not saying that.
Anyway, I think, so what's in Jim's report is language that says that changes to the bulk standards of the VAS were not discussed in the master plan,
Hmm.
Well, let's also remember that that's a redevelopment.
but not all
Some
of
of
it.
it is.
Correct, I'm just saying,
Right.
so maybe it could even be to reevaluate areas. Or, okay.
No, what I was gonna say is
You
that,
say what you're gonna
so
say,
what I was gonna say is like, so Jim's report references
Mhm.
that the master plan is silent on changes to the bulk standards of the VAS. However, this word, and he talks about the consistency, and I think that maybe what we might wanna put in, what I would say is outside of his report
Mhm.
as a recommendation to phrase it, is to build on that and say, before council considers changes to bulk standards in the VAS, the impact of approved projects in the zone or adjacent to the zone, nearby the zone, something approved and potential future projects adjacent nearby the VAS zone should be seen before, making those changes or something like that. You know what I'm saying, Carol? Like it's
Yep.
we're not saying don't do it. We're saying that the master plan didn't really talk about it. Jim points that out, that they're making changes that weren't. It was inconsistent in the fact that it wasn't called for in there, but what we're saying is that more so, we're also raising the question as a recommendation. Why don't we see what the impact is going to be of approved projects in and around the VAS? Right, before we start
Before
considering,
implementing changes.
before implementing changes to the bulk standards. Is that kind of?
Does that need to be a separate one, or could that language be incorporated into, is that?
I would
context separate?
rather it be a separate thing,
Okay.
because I think Jim is talking, I think Jim's report is talking about. Master plan is silent, this is being proposed, that's inconsistent. What we are further saying
Yes,
is.
It's a
not only-
recommendation.
It's a recommendation, we're saying
Okay.
also, it's not only about inconsistent, we're making the argument that it might be premature.
So the master plan did not specifically recommend bulk changes in the VAS district. And it's recommended that before making such changes, the borough should evaluate the impact of approved projects both within the VAS and in adjacent properties to the zone.
Something like that, yeah. Does that capture what?
I think so, and then also, my comment 3 is effectively the same thing everyone else does. In some ways, because I say, given that there should be an ongoing review of other developments that are approved, right?
Yeah.
The potential changes in whatever district they're in. I can't say the words, but you know what I'm saying, like the same thing applies, not just in the VAS, to that approved project, and
Right.
other approved projects.
So,
Same.
so maybe we phrase it as we say that,
And
the
we're just focusing on bulk standards.
bulk standard,
Yes.
Okay, so then I can make that more general,
Right.
if we're making any recommendations concerning changes to bulk standards in any particular zone.
that aren't explicitly
Called
called
out
for
for
in the master plan.
Mhm.
The impact of approved and pending projects throughout the borough should be evaluated.
Mm.
Right, because again, the master plan was silent,
Yeah.
and that allowed, because that also captures things that are. Redevelopment areas that are in the middle of stuff,
Mhm.
as well as projects that are being constructed. Is that,
Yeah,
if I say it like that, we're okay, right now?
Yeah.
and I think that captures those.
They
things.
capture what you were going.
Yeah, I think so, yeah, it says it much better. So I just also want to, so then moving forward, what we will have is, there were a few things, Jim, that we
Yep.
said we're gonna be like, not typos, but there'll be another draft from you on
Yep.
some of the simple levels that we got. And then we'll have, Cara, you're gonna have these.
I'll do the resolution,
The
what I will
resolution.
reference in the resolution is Jim's report,
Mhm,
Jay's report once we get it.
yeah,
I will outline the recommendations that the board members have said so far. We'll revisit this at the next meeting, we'll take a look, we'll make any changes, if we need to make additions, small additions on the fly, we can do that, I just wanted to make sure I
and we
had
have the
something.
HPC, response onto that, just so it's captured on the list.
It could be in the resolutions.
It was listed as an item and the
Yep.
date it was issued or. Cause, yeah.
So you don't want us to vote at the moment, do we need to vote?
I would prefer you not,
Okay.
again, just because I wanna make sure the recommendations are outlined correctly, and that's not to say we can't, again, make changes on the fly, but at least they're there for you guys to look at.
Yeah.
Jim will make his changes, because you guys would rather see that, of
Yeah.
Jay's, we'll do that, and then we can do.
And then
everything at once.
we'll have all, if we can have all the reports and changes so that we can see it ready for, we've got to do it next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Got it.
Karen, just remember, I can't be here
I know you
next week.
can,
Yeah.
but you can issue. the
Oh, yeah, no,
report,
no,
okay?
I'll make the changes that we talked about. I
Thank
think it's
you.
just clarity, but
Yes,
I just
it
can't
was
be
just a
here.
few clarifications, it wasn't
Yep, not a
substantial.
problem.
Thank you very much.
Good,
sure,
yeah,
of
thank
course.
you, thank you very much,
This is
for
good.
stepping in, appreciate that. Okay, so I think we have a plan. Does everybody feel good, and anybody else feel as if they need to raise at this point, because this is our chance, our moment, time to shine.
How many coffees did you
But
have?
anything or just
Just on this right now. All right, thank you very much, everybody then. So we would move on to item 9, but we already tabled that, with no extra notice needed for next week's meeting.
And just for purposes of the records, everyone knows the plans were not submitted at least 10 days before.
We didn't have.
We want to make sure that they were on and available to members of the public, so that's
But
the reason.
but they're available now, they've
They
noticed.
are available now, they have, correct,
Yeah.
correct. That,
They've noticed, so we're not having them do extra notice, but we wanted to make sure that the whole point of delaying this discussion to when we did do it was that we wanted the public to see those changed plans and have time to look, and if they wanna come, and we did have people come.
Yeah.
So it's exactly, we wanna
Let's
make
make
sure that
sure that-
everybody has seen.
let's make sure Carla has them on the, which she may have already done, but make sure they're on the website.
I don't think we got them yet, did we?
No.
No.
Okay,
There, oh, you know,
Well, that's
but there's
again-
there's a Dropbox folder. So so we can forward. If Carla's not back in, you can probably forward the email
I'll
to the
forward
board.
Okay, thank you, yeah.
I like it, yeah. We spoke too soon last meeting when I was like, okay, we're good, and we're done, and then rug got pulled out again, so I apologize. Pesky day job, messed me up with that. I apologize, I didn't,
You're all good.
oh, we'll get there, huh?
Chair items.
Yes, I will move to chair items. I had one, Melissa, sorry to put you on the spot, I know you're tired, but the bylaws subcommittee, did that get moving, or can we
Yes,
do some-
I just actually sent an email tonight with draft dates, so.
Okay. Then I will look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
Yep.
Thank you. I didn't write anything else down, but I might not have had enough coffee. Did you seem like you wanted?
Other bills, are we coming up?
Enough bills.
We're not on to the bills yet, but we'll go to the bills.
So next week's meeting, just to
Yeah.
quickly do this, so the
Yeah.
next week's meeting, we've carried Liberty Village, that hearing. We have, what else on the agenda?
We have less wellness.
We have less
We have
wellness,
to come back,
and
which
then,
Beth, we said they were first.
yeah, and then less wellness first, and
And
Liberty
then
Village.
Liberty Village.
And we have, what else is on there?
This.
This resolution.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
am going to try to have the resolution for Flemington Circle on as well. I wanna do this one first, obviously, because this is more important, but
Yeah.
I'll try to get that one as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it. I think that's it.
One thing, I don't know if you wanna throw it under the chair, that
Absolutely.
email Bill Hanson about email migration.
Oh, email migration.
Friday.
So what?
Is it automatically gonna transfer, or this is
So-
where you can do it on your
So,
phone?
no, in fact, in order to maintain your borough email accounts, you have to download Microsoft Authenticator, thank you. You have to download Microsoft Authenticator. If you have problems with that, I believe our IT guys gonna be here for some group of hours on Friday. I'm not sure how many. So but I did it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Trust me. I had to delete God knows how many texts that go back a decade, but made space.
So everyone.
So that's what you have to do. You have to download Microsoft Authenticator. And I think that's the only thing you need to do.
Yeah,
I don't, I think
That's all-
automatically.
that's all the
it will,
emails.
Everything
it
from
will
Rackspace
copy
is,
you.
everything from Rackspace is gonna migrate over.
Yes,
Okay.
my understanding is.
4,000 emails.
I was gonna say,
My
better do.
understanding is that, yes, and then there are
Okay.
going to be certain accounts are gonna be, like, there are accounts from the planning board that are still open, which we don't even understand. And
I looked at the list, there are some people who haven't been on council in quite some time.
I planning board and whatever.
It takes me
So
every.
they're all gonna close and then there's gonna be a whole bunch of former employee stuff is all gonna get
Yeah.
archived. So
How are we going to be accessing the email then?
I have no idea.
Same,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, no,
It's going to Microsoft Office.
So you're gonna.
So it's like, yeah.
It's
out.
government, Microsoft got Office 365 for government, so it should be on the pop, like I have a, I'm sure you guys might have on from work.
But it's
Because
gonna
it's
try,
government.
all the old stuff's gonna.
I'm sure it'll be
Notified, but
the first email you'll get, that you won't be able to open because you won't have a password, will tell you how to do it. So
It's gonna be fun,
always is.
but let's make sure we
I'm
can,
on-
what we were
I'm getting
supposed to do.
15 cans and it's straight for anybody.
I'm,
I like
that's what I use for work, so it's not a bad place.
It's not bad.
It's like,
It's better than last
look,
week.
And it's
transition.
actually for governments, we're all supposed to be using this. level.
Okay.
All of us should be, and even,
Rackspace,
it's the safest
Rackspace
way.
has been so problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because we do a lot of government contracts at work.
The transitions are just always hard, so I'm always like,
As long
let's
as we
do
don't,
it.
as long as you don't force us to go from Zoom to Teams.
Oh,
no.
no.
Teams.
It's okay.
Teams.
Really great. I love Dave.
I don't think we can have an official policy. I don't think we can have an official policy on Teams.
Madam Chair, I'm
we
just
also
noting
need-
for the record that my champion is.
He left.
leaving.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Alright. Yeah, and I made a note that Bob Clerico left at the end of item 7.2, I know, so
Any other chair?
any other chair, I don't think so, I think that's enough. Let's move to the bills, which.
I will move
Forward
to,
and-
I will move to audit the bills,
Thank you.
I'll second.
so now we can have discussion on whatever it is they choose.
Yeah, we had, one of the things I was very clear with council. When we started this process, I was extremely clear that the invoicing for that, for their work needs to go.
On this ordinance we just discussed tonight.
Just on this, as opposed to us, so I have one invoice, 7377. And that one is for $1,140.
This is from.
This is, yeah, so $600 needs to go to the council and $540, based on what I looked at, was for the planning board. Somebody wants to do a double check, I'm a big believer in, view, give a week back, and then we're good to go on anything financial.
We need to know.
You know what page it was already for you?
It's 13 or 14, it's page 13 and 14 in the bills.
Yeah.
You should see it there, and when I printed it out, my highlights didn't come through.
What was the invoice number?
It's
7377.
7377.
Alright, I'll send Beth a note to just split that up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're right, I'm looking at this, Adrian, there were meetings that were
There's
council
five-
meetings and there's meetings that are our meetings, yeah.
There's five line items that should go to the council.
And we have separate buckets, for those.
And again, our chair, she reduced the budget this year, which was very.
No, I
gracious.
appreciate you.
So I want to make sure that, we're.
Yeah.
And,
That we don't wanna reach our limit and then find out, should we pay for council?
yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
Do you have a problem if I take it off the bill list?
And I do look at bills every.
Alright, so I think we should,
While,
let's remove this from the bill list that you're going to hopefully approve for auditing tonight. Jim and Beth will take care of it, we'll have it on.
Yeah, we'll turn it around by the end of the month.
Yep.
So then I am amending my motion to audit the bills to move to audit the bills with the exception of invoice 7377 from Comic Mountain Associates dated 8/30/2025.
I'll second.
we have to do everybody?
Yeah, we will go, that's
I
mine.
know it's fair. Money. Alright, so we'll take the roll call, Mayor Karen.
Yes.
I'll do this here. Councilperson Fazaro,
Yes.
Mr. Campion left. Ms. Weitzman,
Yes.
Miss Swingle,
Yes.
Mr. Show,
Yes.
Mr. Schlanger,
Yes.
Mr. Doshner,
Yes.
Mr. Eckel,
Yes.
Mr. Hain,
Yes. There you've got,
I think we have enough,
you have, yeah.
even without my
Yeah,
vote.
beyond it.
We're all good, excellent, thank you very much, everybody. Let me just write vote slash
Was
to
it-
the left.
Oh, you vote.
You didn't vote.
Oh, could you?
Skip it.
Yes.
You can call yourself, you can actually.
Can I?
Yes.
You're doing that function.
But was that was 9? With you?
She was at a.
1,
she
2,
was at
3,
12.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So,
Alright, so let's stop the last one that you called.
so,
Cory.
no, it was
The
Mr.
last one before you.
Mr. Hain.
Sorry, you can never
I'll
vote.
never vote.
Never, this poor thing comes to every meeting.
He has voted.
I mean, it's part of the discussion as per.
All right, she just isn't afraid to.
As per bylaws, thank you, yeah. All right, do we have a need to go into executive session today? All right, excellent.
Move to adjourn.
We're not leaving it all
Aye.
over me tonight,
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's keep
No,
going, guys,
you-
stay on this, if I get
Yeah.
up here, and I can.
And me?
If I can't, stays on till the end.
Yeah, I had.
There.
So, right now, my.
You get the
borough
vote,
is on this one.
the motions.
Work is on, like, a house over, so, I'm not sure how
That's the thing.
Go back, find out to be
Oh,
recorded. You wanna stop recording?
I'm going to stop recording now, everybody, thank you.
It will not be reused.
Um.